Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Arron.
And today we are talking about the phenomenon of the twin film.
Let's get started in 3, 2, 1, action.
Now, today we are going to be talking about twin films. This is a special topic to us. If you are just listening, Arron and I are actually identical twins.
We are. We look the same.
Separated by birth by just a couple minutes.
Especially when I put on my glasses. I'm not wearing them right now, but if I put on my glasses, you wouldn't be able to tell us apart.
If you're watching on YouTube, we are not twins.
Anyways.
But if you're listening, we are twins. So, Arron, what is this thing that I call the phenomenon of the twin film?
So twin films are when two different studios put out a movie that is about the same thing within a year. So the plot is basically identical. The titles are basically identical. And they come out right around the same time. And at first thought, it's like, they wouldn't do that, right? Like, why? That doesn't make any sense. Now they're like direct competitors. You know, there's no recency bias to any of them. They're both coming out at the same time. Which one do you go watch?
People only have so much money in their pockets to go see a movie in theaters. Now you're sharing, the audience.
Yeah, you would think that both studios would probably do better spreading it out a little bit, but at the same time, it pays to be first. And if you're not first, it's beneficial to be tied for first.
If you ain't first, you're last.
That's right.
Now, this begs the question, right? Why would they do this? I think a big part of the answer is that it's not necessarily on purpose. So I did some research into why we think twin films might happen. And I came on this website called cbr.com that gave me a lot of my information. So there's a few reasons why a twin film might occur. These pairings might pop up. One of the reasons being is that when somebody's trying to get a film made, they have to take their script and pitch it to different studios. Now, they're telling the story to a lot of people in the movie business. So somebody from one of those pitch meetings might have heard the story, and whether subconsciously or on purpose, they might decline that story and then move forward with creating something similar, either thinking it's an original idea or could be viewed as taking somebody's idea or innovating, building off somebody's idea. There's actually a famous story of this happening where John Lasseter was pitching the story of what became A Bug's Life. He pitched it to a man named Jeffrey Katzenberg, who went on to make the movie Ants, which is a famous twin film. Ants and A Bug Life, very similar. They came out right next to each other, and I think there's some bad blood between these guys because of that.
Yeah, that's like blatantly obvious, right? That one got their idea from the other. If that's actually how it went down, to where one pitched a film to that person, and that person went off and made a film that's identical to it.
Right. I mean, when Ants comes out, if you're John Lasseter, who just pitched a very similar concept, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I would be pissed. It's like, that's my idea. Yeah. I spent forever coming up with that story, and you stole it.
And there's nothing you could do about it. But that's just one reason it might happen. There's a couple of different reasons. I mean, it could be just literally purely by happenstance, because there is, there's the term the public zeitgeist, or like the public knowledge. We all have like certain things that flow in and out of it in terms of popularity.
There's a lot of like what's going on in the world, and like different times and stuff that impact stories, and then people just have a similar story based off those myths or whatever that's occurring at the time. One of the movies that we're going to be talking about that goes over that is talking about the end of the world.
Yeah, like Armageddon and Deep Impact. There might have been some reason that, end of the world apocalypse was floating through the air, or like during Y2K, The Matrix came out, and some other similar movies came out, because the fear surrounding technology at the time and the end of the world relating to it. So
knowing in 2012.
Yeah.
That's a pretty obvious one that like, wow, these guys could have actually had the same idea, because 2012 was coming up.
Yeah, I mean, you have just where like maybe the public's really particularly fascinated with something like serial killers at a time, and a lot of those documentaries are coming out. You might be bound to have two about the same person come out near the same time. So that's a reason that it might happen. I mean, you have to I've always think about it like the way villains have been focused throughout history. Like, who's the main villain of the world right now? You know, back in the day we had Germans as the main villain in a lot of American films. And then after the Cold War rolls around, there's a lot of Russian villains like Rocky IV. And then now I see like, it looks like big business, companies, the rich, politicians. That seems to be a big focus of who's our like main villains in movies. Like I thought about it. We just watched Reacher not too long ago. And it seemed like they really kind of forced the like, oh, the money grubbing companies are evil. Like that seems to be the way things are now. So it just flows with popularity. Like we have, big booms in terms of themes. Like you got Lord of the Rings coming out alongside things like Harry Potter. Fantasy is really big. I think a big one is like when Twilight came out, that really boomed the genre of like the fantasy love romantic story. Yeah, there's a lot of those YA stories too, but I'm talking about like the movie Warm Bodies. I think is kind of inspired by that Twilight star-crossed lovers between different species or what have you. But yeah, the YA thing was huge for a long time. It's arguably still going. I mean, you had Percy Jackson coming out, Maze Runner, Divergent, Hunger Games. Like you're bound to run into some similar movies when the companies are trying to make money. When they notice something is popular, they're like going to hammer into it. So
I think the hot topic right now is superheroes.
Yeah. So,
every company, every streaming network is coming out with their versions of superheroes.
That's why we have the like 5 evil Superman hypothetical movies.
Yeah.
But then there's a few other reasons even too, one writer or director might be picked for their success on like a previous project. Like if Zack Snyder did really great on Watchmen, or if James Gunn did really great on Guardians of the Galaxy, they're going to be tapped for a concept like a comic book or a movie that has a similar feel. So then those movies end up being similar. Companies might end up bidding on the same project, and in this case, the losing company might try to get one over on the company who wins the project bid and try and snap up something similar. I found a really funny story that Hulu and Netflix were both vying for a project called Fire, the greatest party that never happened. Hulu lost, and they ended up buying a documentary on the same subject and rushing their documentary through production just to get it out 4 days before Netflix could get theirs out. It's great. It's like, it's funny seeing stuff like that. It's like these companies have a little bit of humanity to them, a little bit of human imperfection.
All right, so let's kind of dive right into the twin film that I think of the most when someone asks, hey, have you seen a twin film? Or, wow, these 2 movies are coming out and they're about the same thing. The one that first comes to mind for me is Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down. Have you seen both of those?
Yeah, I've seen both of them.
Yeah. I like both movies. Here's some numbers on these movies. For the budget of Olympus Has Fallen, they had a budget of $70 million, and White House Down had a $150 million budget. And then the gross for both of them, for Olympus Has Fallen, is $170 million, and then compared to $205 million for White House Down.
Surprising, because I like Olympus Has Fallen a lot more, and White House Down made more money, but it also had more than double the budget.
Yeah, I think I actually liked White House Down more.
Really?
Yes.
I feel like but like in Olympus Has Fallen, the action is like darker and grittier, which is normally your style. Right?
So I think part of the reason why I'm saying that is because I remember that movie the most, and I remember watching it with my family and just having a good time.
I think Channing Tatum is like very charismatic. Definitely puts a lot of butts in seats. Probably a big part of the reason that they raked in a little bit more
His
of a dough than
are
Olympus
Has
Fallen. Yeah,
and like
plus
you said,
Jamie Foxx, same thing.
Right. And I do like the more realistic kind of grounded aspect of Olympus Has Fallen. Like one of the big things that sticks out is like how many of the Secret Service members there are in each movie. White House Down, there's like 5. And then Olympus Has Fallen, there's a bunch more, which seems
more
like
realistic.
It would actually be that way more so. But I think for me, what makes a good movie is partially my experience during that movie, and I just remember having a good time with White House Down.
Which one came out first?
I actually don't have that. Oh, I do have that on here. So Olympus Has Fallen came out on March 22nd, 2013. And then 3 months later, the same year, White House Down came out.
I think it is probably important for us to mention, too, that I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that White House Down, quote unquote, copied Olympus Has Fallen, because different movies are in production for different amounts of times, or sometimes the movie's sitting in the can before they release it to theaters. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they came up with the idea first. They still might have.
Yeah.
But
maybe one movie even had a release date that was sooner, but then something went wrong with productions and they had to push the release date back a little bit.
All kinds of different.
You never really know.
All different reasons. But personally, I can't believe you would pick White House Down, because Gerard Butler is just so cool and kick ass, and Olympus Has Fallen. It's interesting. These movies even have the same like structure for their name, like a 3-word title.
Yeah.
Specifically describing like an attack on the White House.
Yeah.
The plot is so similar, and they came out 3 months apart.
Yeah.
This is wild that the people who made White House Down must have just been kicking themselves like when they saw this movie that is the exact same come out before.
Yeah. Olympus Has Fallen, like I said, it's a good movie. I enjoy it. I do. But it also didn't hold my attention enough to really make me get invested in the trilogy of the Olympus Has Fallen
I'm the
movies.
same.
You know, like it was good, but like the other two seemed unnecessary, and I didn't really... I think I've watched them in bits and pieces.
I haven't watched the sequels, but I mean, I do really like the first one. I have no really interest in... I don't feel like you said, there's no need to make 2 more. But it did critically perform a little bit better than White House Down. Not that either of them did great, but has a IMDb rating of 6.5, whereas White House Down has a 6.3.
Which is arguably the same score.
Negligible difference. I mean, I think that... they performed a little better with audiences. On Rotten Tomatoes, Olympus Has Fallen has a 66%, and White House Down has a 62%. But overall, pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
Weird for them to be so similar and still be rated so similarly as well.
Right. And in the end, I mean, they made close to the same amount of money to it. It seems like just because the budget of Olympus Has Fallen is a lot lower, that they may have kind of broke even a little bit more, so maybe.
Yeah.
But it all depends on how much they spent on marketing and all that stuff. Either way, neither of them brought in like a huge profit.
White House Down might have been close to losing money with how they're only $55 million over their budget. But I think part of what makes me like Olympus Has Fallen has to be that Antoine Fuqua directed it. I love Antoine Fuqua. He directed Southpaw. He directed Training Day, which is such a great movie. Like, he directs some of my favorite action movies. He directs another movie we have further down this list, The Equalizer. He's the man, and he kills it with action. I think the action is like tough and gritty, and like just really cool fight choreography in this movie. Gerard Butler, I mean, he's Leonidas. He's the man.
All right, moving on to a few other twin movies. We're going to kind of rapid fire a few of them off all at once. So we have Fighter versus Warrior.
2 movies that I love. I know we're rapid firing, but
that's not rapid firing
I love
anymore.
Joel Edgerton and Tom Hardy in The Warrior, and in The Fighter.
We're going to come back to talk about all of these at once. So let me say my list.
All right, both of them.
So we got Snow White and the Huntsman versus Mirror Mirror. We have Sky High versus Zoom. The Prestige versus The Illusionist. Are all twin movies. They all came out around the same time, and they're all about the same thing. And back to the Fighter and Warrior.
I wanted to also say that I also love Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale's performance in The Fighter, especially how Christian Bale dropped so much weight to be in The Fighter, and he totally deserved the Oscar that he won for Best Supporting Actor. Those are great movies. I'd probably say I like Warrior more just because it's more entertaining. They both of them have incredible performances. Have you seen both?
I have seen Warrior more. I think I've seen Fighter all the way through, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's pretty slow. I don't think Fighter's the most memorable movie. It just has good performances. But Warrior is so hype. I love Warrior.
I love it too. Kind of going with the other ones, have you seen any of the kind of Snow White stories?
I've seen Snow White and the Huntsman, I believe, is the one I've seen. Those ones are so similar that I know I've seen one of them and I don't know which one.
Yeah.
I know Snow White and the Huntsman has Chris Evans. No. Chris Hemsworth.
Yes.
So I think that's the one I've seen.
Yeah.
I don't remember being that impressed with it.
Honestly, I don't think I've seen either of them. I think I've kind of been in the room while it's been on, but I don't think I ever sat down and watched either of them. Sky High versus Zoom. I haven't seen Zoom, but I enjoyed Sky High when I was younger.
I've turned Zoom off at the very beginning. Whenever I tried to watch it, I did not think.
Not a good sign.
But Sky High is great. Like it's what it is. It's like a TV show kind of movie.
Yeah.
But it's just a classic from my childhood. I love watching Sky High every time it comes on. It's so much fun.
Yeah, the last one that was kind of in this rapid fire list. I know you really enjoy one of these movies. I'm going to encourage you not to talk too much about it so we can do a full episode on it one day. And so we can kind of get to the rest of our list. We have The Prestige versus The Illusionist.
I've not seen The Illusionist, even though I do really love Edward Norton. But I will quickly say the only thing about The Prestige, phenomenal movie. It stars Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, and the director is Christopher Nolan. And if you need to know if you need to know any more about it than that to make you watch it, then we probably can't be friends.
The next versus in these twin movies we have is Madagascar and The Wild. I have some numbers here. We got one of them came out in 5/27/2005, and then almost a year later, sorry, that was Madagascar, and then almost a year later, The Wild came out. So a lot bigger of a time difference with this one. They both had around the same budget of $75 to $80 million, and one of them blew the other one out of the water, and it was the one that actually came out first. Madagascar bringing in $542 million compared to The Wild only bringing in $102 million, only $20 million higher than its budget. Ouch.
Yeah, Madagascar is obviously a huge success. Like everyone knows this movie, super quotable. You got King Julian. I mean, who's the cast? Like
Ben move in.
You've got Ben Stiller, Chris Rock, Dave Schwimmer. Like you got a rock star movie on your hands. The Wild, I would say that they lost money because of marketing, but I don't even know if anybody marketed this movie. I feel like I never saw anything for it. I guess I was 7 years old, but
yeah,
I feel like it would have been like
much of it.
I feel like I would have wanted to see it if I saw anything for it at that age, but
I saw Madagascar in theaters again when I was 9 when it came out, and then The Wild. I didn't hear about that for a while.
I saw that recently as an adult and thought it was not great, and I feel like it's not just because I was an adult. I would still enjoy Madagascar if I watched it now, certainly.
Yeah. The third Madagascar, though, just skip it.
I think there might even,
saw that one in theaters too with my sisters, and that was hard to get through.
I would stop making them at 2. Yeah. But hey, you can't know until you're looking back. Hindsight's 20/20.
All right, some rapid fire coming at you. We have Mall Cop versus Observe and Report, Happy Feet and Surfs Up, Gamer and Surrogates.
Surrogates.
Sorry. And then Knowing versus 2012.
So from most of these on this part, I've only seen one of them. Besides, I've seen Happy Feet and Surfs Up. I guess actually I've seen Gamers and Surrogates, and I've seen Knowing in 2012. So never mind. I just haven't seen Observe and Report.
I've kind of seen like either one or the other on most of these. I liked Mall Cop a lot.
The movie's very funny.
That was a fun movie.
When he eats the lollipop off the floor for his like blood sugar, it's so gross, but it's so funny.
Yeah, like you were saying with Madagascar, like there's a lot of quotable moments in this.
Kevin James is just you know what's the most quotable from that movie is that peanut Blarton jelly.
And like when he slides across the floor but just doesn't quite make it to the spot that he's going, so he like kind of waddles his way through while crawling. That was pretty funny.
That's a good movie.
Another twin movie that we're going to talk about is Shark Tale versus Finding Nemo.
Oh yeah, this is a good topic.
Yeah, this one I think kind of has the biggest impact with both of them. They both did pretty good. We have Finding Nemo coming out first on May 30th, 2003. Shark Tale coming out on October 1st, 2004. And then they had a budget, Shark Tale at $75 million, Nemo at $94 million. And then they both brought in a good amount comparatively to their budgets. One was a lot higher than the other, but Shark Tale had a respectable number of 374 million, so almost 3 million above its budget, which I would say is a successful movie for the studio. And then Finding Nemo brought in $940 million.
Yeah,
so
that's
very close
huge.
to $1 billion.
Yeah, that's
on
like
a less than $100 million budget. That's crazy.
I know it's like a family movie, but really first and foremost, it's a kids movie. So for them to bring in $940 million is pretty insane. Like a family movie would be to me like an MCU movie. They appeal to all audiences. I feel like Finding Nemo is a little bit more angled towards kids and still brought in almost $1 billion. Very impressive. Also,
I think Shark Tale is definitely kind of marketed more towards like the teenager,
maybe a little older.
Yeah.
Will Smith is so funny in that. So the last two we've talked about that were animated, the ones we're really hitting on, they're a little further apart in time frame, but you have to keep in mind that animated movies take so long to animate. Like these movies were definitely in production around, if not the same time.
Yeah.
Like you can't stop.
They're still within a year. Time.
They're still really, really close.
A little over a year, I guess.
Now, of these two, I would definitely say that my favorite is Shark Tale, which I think might be a hot take, but what's your favorite?
My favorite is Finding Nemo, and I think it's based more off of my first time watching both of them. To me, when I was in 2003, I was connecting more with a movie that was like Finding Nemo than I was Shark Tale. I didn't really like Shark Tale nearly as much as Finding Nemo.
I recently rewatched.
I think the animation, I like that better in Nemo too.
Pixar is killer. I mean, I think that Shark Tale's DreamWorks, but it's not. I mean, great, but Pixar is just masters.
Yeah.
But I think I enjoyed like the comedy a lot better in Shark Tale. You got Will Smith in it. I mean, Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese do voices in this movie. How crazy is that? You got Scorsese and De Niro in this movie.
It had a lot of like you said, more adult themes, with like these gangster sharks and stuff.
Stuff for adults to laugh at.
Yeah.
I've rewatched this movie a ton of times. I recently just rewatched Finding Nemo with my nephew. He's only 2 years old, so he's watching it for the first time, and I still love Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo's great. It's an awesome like adventure, and it is funny. It's just like this crazy tale how far this story is going, taking them all the way to Australia. I just find Shark Tale so much like more funny. I don't know. Shark Tale kind of warms my heart, like when you watch Shrek or something like that. Like I feel like they really touch on that. Like DreamWorks is really good at that, just making it feel like fun.
Yeah. Moving on, we kind of touched on this one a little bit, Bug's Life and Ants, and then we have Phone Booth and Liberty Stands Still. I haven't seen any of those, either of those two.
So I wanted to say, wait, you haven't seen Bug's Life?
No, I said those two, Phone Booth.
Oh, gotcha.
Liberty Stands Still.
So those are probably a little bit more niche ones. The reason I put that I wanted to make sure this was on the list is because I love the movie Phone Booth. If I have any chance to plug it, this is where I fell in love with Colin Farrell. He's a great actor. This movie is a one-scene movie. It all takes place, for the most part, in a phone booth. And they managed to have me sucked into the plot the whole time. Yeah, right? It takes a lot of talent to do that.
Yeah.
To just sit in one place. And this movie is like, to me, the most challenge. I haven't seen Buried with Ryan Reynolds, but to me, this is such a challenging creative project for somebody like a writer or director to keep you engrossed, find new angles with the camera work the whole time, sticking to a phone booth. Like, you know how small a phone booth is? It's a really great movie. I recommend everyone watch it.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Buried with Ryan Reynolds. That one's good.
Have to watch that.
I want to say it was my first rated R movie.
Really?
So like it kind of stuck out to me when I watched it, and I have never forgotten that movie. I thought it was so cool that they were able to tell a full story and he's literally in a coffin.
Your memory's so good. I don't know. I feel like I don't know what my first rated R movie was.
So my memory is more so based off of feelings, and I think your memory is more like facts and stuff. Like you remember specific lines and stuff that actors say in movies. Like I can't do that. You remember lyrics really well from songs. I remember the emotions that I have when I first heard the song. That's what I remember about it. So it's cool that different aspects of memory.
That is really interesting. And that connects to like how we feel about these movies too. Like, cause I might remember more scenes and you might remember more what the movie made you feel.
Right.
But the next topic that we have, the next movie that we're going to discuss, or the next pairing.
We have Equalizer versus John Wick.
All right. Now, this, I think, might have been the toughest decision for me so far on this list if I was going to pick my favorite.
So I'll let you think about which one's your favorite for a second and go over when these came out. They came out very close to each other, only being a month apart, with the Equalizer coming out first in September 26, 2014, and then again a month later in October 24th, 2014, John Wick came out. John Wick had a small budget of $20 million, and then the Equalizer had also a relatively small budget too, of $55 million. And then the Equalizer brought in $192 million, while John Wick only brought in $86 million.
Which, these movies have a lot of violence, so that's part of why you don't see like 500 million on these movies, even though they're, I'm sure, very successful in DVD sales and they're really big like action movies in general. But the crazy thing about this is John Wick and the Equalizer aren't even separated by a full month. This is 28 days. They came out so close to one another.
Right.
Like, and they're really similar. They're like, a retired kind of hitman assassin who has all the skills and talents, has to step back into the game,
after
one last time.
Died.
Yeah. After losing something there, it's like on a revenge mission. Like, I think in the Equalizer, he's going after revenge for maybe that Chloe Grace Moretz's character, right?
Yep.
The young girl that he like is a mentor to. And then John Wick, it's his dog, obviously we all tragically remember, but great directors.
I think they both lost their wife before the movie.
Yeah. So many similar things, and
very similar movies.
And then they're both great movies. Like the Equalizer's directed by Anton Fuqua, who I already talked about, legendary for directing action movies and movies in general. And then John Wick, I think, is the directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken, for Chad Stahelski, who he's the man. We love him now from the John Wick franchise, a stuntman turned director, which is why the action is so good in John Wick. If I had to pick one, I'm gonna have to go John Wick. I think it's just a more iconic, better action movie. Yeah. But Denzel versus Keanu, it's tough.
It is tough. I saw the Equalizer before I saw John Wick. I only saw John Wick a few years ago, so I think 3 John Wicks were out when I first saw the first one. So just in terms of which one has been with me the longest is Equalizer. But it's a hard pick. I think just to be different from you, I'd pick Equalizer.
Enemies.
Again, I like John Wick, but it hasn't. I didn't like it enough to rush to the sequels. I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, that is a good point. And
I'll be down to watch the sequels, but I just didn't have that urge right after watching it to go out and watch them right away,
Yeah, I'm a big person against what I feel like are unnecessary sequels.
Yes.
And that's why I haven't watched the sequels to Olympus Has Fallen or really John Wick, even though I like both those movies a lot. Mm-hmm. John Wick, I just think in the context of picking between these two, John Wick does better world building than Equalizer. Like the way they have these coins for the assassins as a form of currency, and the way they all seem to know each other and have existing relationships, plus the hotel where the fighting is off limits. There's just a small microcosm of a community in their Hitman world, Really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, we got Truman Show and EDTV.
EdTV.
Haven't seen that. Haven't even heard of that. The A-Team versus the Losers.
Now, I've seen all these movies besides EdTV. Also haven't seen that.
To be honest, I have not seen any of these. I've seen bits and pieces of the A-Team.
Dude, the Truman Show is a great movie. You got to watch it. We'll do an episode on it one day.
Add it to the list.
Great performance by Jim Carrey. And then the A-Team and the Losers are both a lot of fun. I definitely like A-Team more. A-Team has Liam Neeson, and it has B.A. Baracus, and it has all these great actors. It has Bradley Cooper. That's a super fun time. It's fun.
Moving on, this one to me is another one that really sticks out of being a twin movie of wow, these movies are exactly the same. When I think of twin movies, this is one of the verses that comes up in my mind. We have No Strings Attached and Friends with Benefits. Same story. And the thing that's pretty funny is that husband and wife are in both movies. We have Mila Kunis in Friends with Benefits, and then Ashton Kutcher in No Strings Attached. Isn't that funny that you're making the same movie with your spouse and it's coming out at the exact same time?
Yeah, and this is another one kind of like the first one we discussed where it also has the same 3-word structure to the title, and the titles mean the same thing, like No Strings Attached and Friends with Benefits. Like, they're very similar.
Yeah, it's very obvious that these are the same movies. Now, their budgets are basically the same. No Strings Attached had $25 million, while Friends with Benefits had $35 million, and they both made $145 million. These are the same movie. No Strings Attached came out in January 21st, 2011, and then 6 months later, 22nd, we had Friends with Benefits.
Almost exactly 6 months apart. The same movie comes out and makes the same amount of money.
Yeah, July 22nd.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and they're pretty close on the ratings as well. Friends with Benefits has a little bit higher of an audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, but other than that, they're pretty much the same. Have you seen both of these? Or?
I've seen both of them, and to me, they're kind of forgettable. I don't remember much.
It's a rom-com. How much do you remember rom-coms?
Well, some rom-coms. Some rom-coms.
Do you watch a lot of rom-coms?
Yes, they're like Sierra's favorite kind of movies.
Yeah.
So my fiance, for those listening, but those ones I wasn't particularly like in love with. I'd say Friends with Benefits I probably remember thinking was funnier. I don't remember hardly anything about No Strings Attached.
Yeah, so again, it's hard to tell these two apart. I get them confused all the time. I like rom-coms. It's like the only kind of movie my wife will actually watch with me and pay attention to the whole thing.
Stop putting these qualifiers in. You know we both love rom-coms either way. I was watching rom-coms long before Sierra showed up.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy Stupid Love is like one of my favorite movies. It's got to be like top 20.
I just watched that like 2 weeks ago.
Ryan Gosling's a stud in that movie.
It's great, yeah, for sure. But a week ago, I just watched No Strings Attached, so I remember that one the most. It was good. I would have to watch Friends with Benefits again, because again, they blur together. But I think No Strings Attached was pretty good.
It's just wild because you would think, even just in terms of like an experiment, like seasonally, you would think movies would perform differently. If they're exactly the same in so many ways, you'd think coming out 6 months later would change the performance, but like everything, like the ratings are pretty close, the budgets and grosses are pretty close. It's strange how similar they are.
Both had 2 good lead actors in both movies. We had Ashton Kutcher and
JT.
Yep.
Justin Timberlake.
Mm-hmm. And then
Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis.
Yes. All right. Throwing out some other ones, we have Armageddon and Deep Impact, Civil War, Captain America Civil War, and Batman versus Superman. I didn't realize that those came out the same year, Batman vs. Superman and Civil War.
Yeah, it was a big year, honestly, like for movies. That's the year that I started dating my fiance, because our first date was to see Batman vs. Superman.
Wow. How romantic. You took her to watch that first movie together? Oh my gosh, I'm surprised she stayed with you.
She wanted to see it. I told her it was not very good because I had already seen it.
Oh no.
She's a fake fan. She didn't go see it opening weekend, but...
Yeah, well, she didn't miss much opening weekend.
She won't listen this far to hear me make fun of her, so...
That's true. And then the last twin movie that we're going to go over...
Before we say the last one, I didn't say anything about the other two. I wanted to say Armageddon, to me, is a strange movie because I've never seen the whole thing, but I have seen the end, and I did cry. So the movie... I cried at a part in the movie without having actually seen like the first 3/4 of the movie.
Oh my gosh. That's funny because I've seen like the opening probably 20 minutes.
So together we finished Armageddon, except we haven't seen the whole middle.
Yeah. We saw the opening act and the final act, act 3. That's funny. All right. Can I move on to the last one?
You have my permission.
All right. Thank you, sir. We have Megamind versus Despicable Me.
Now, we'll say on the count of 3, what's your favorite between the two of them? 1, 2, 3. Megamind.
Hey, good taste, my friend. I feel like normally you go the opposite way that I go, so it's good to know that we're in agreement here. Megamind is a top tier movie.
These movies are both great, and like I love the heartwarming aspect of Despicable Me, like with him adopting the 3 girls, and his voice acting is great. I love Steve Carell. Miranda Cosgrove is in Despicable Me also. So It's a great movie. I love it. But Megamind is like so unique, and like I said about Shark Tale, Megamind just makes me genuinely laugh more. I think it's so funny.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I like the visual aspect of it too, and the showmanship that the characters have. It's a really cool detail that I enjoy. I feel like Despicable Me, to me, has a lot more like cheesy parts to it, and I'm not a big fan of cheesy kind of comedy, whether it's in a kid's movie or even an adult comedy. That's just not my kind of thing. Sure, there's a little bit of cheesy parts in Megamind too, I'd imagine. I don't remember them because I remember all the good parts of the movie. But Megamind, for me, was definitely the better movie out of the two. They came out pretty close to each other. Again, coming out July 9th, 2010, we have Despicable Me. And then November 5th, 2010, we have Megamind. Despicable Me had a lower budget of $89 million. And then Megamind had a $130 million budget, which kind of goes into the showmanship of it, right? It costs more to make it. However, Despicable Me did kind of blow Megamind out of the water in terms of box office gross sales of $543 million compared to $321 million.
Honestly, a part of me, the initial jump in my brain, and maybe I'm just a hater, but I feel like part of that might have to do solely with the Minions and less to do with the quality of the actual movie. I feel like the Minions obsession was so strong that maybe like some kids and families were going for that and going back to the theaters for the Minion. I literally, the first time I watched Despicable Me, I laughed so hard I cried at the one scene when he's like shooting the Minions with an anti-gravity ray, and like he's like, when does it wear off? And he's like, we haven't seen yet. And it shows the ceiling and they're just floating. The Minions are hilarious. Yeah. But I think overall Megamind is like a better, funnier movie, like better, I don't know. Megamind, it's just for me personally. I don't know, maybe I wouldn't necessarily say it's a better overall movie, but I enjoy Megamind more. I laugh more.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of dig into your memory brain of your line recollection of what was the line where he's like, presentation.
Oh, man.
He's like, what makes a good villain or superhero or something? And then
presentation.
And then just fireworks and smoke and like these big huge ships and stuff comes out, and he's like putting on a show when he's going to fight the bad guy Titan.
Yeah. So. Oh man, so many good voices in Megamind. Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Jonah Hill, Brad Pitt, right? Like it's so great. And like his interactions between him and his like best friend, just so funny. Like he's like a good comedic sympathetic villain. I would like to watch Megamind again right now.
I'm for it. Let's go ahead and end this podcast, and we'll go ahead and watch it.
All right, guys. Well, we're about to go watch Megamind. We appreciate you listening.
If you have an idea for a movie, be careful who you tell it to, because they might go make the same movie.
You gotta watch that creative licensing.
That's right.
Yeah, if you guys thought of any twin films that we didn't, go ahead and comment. Let us know which one of these are your favorite. I mean, Shark Tale versus Finding Nemo, what do you like better? Megamind versus Despicable Me, which one's your favorite? Hit us up in the comments, and we'll talk back and forth. We'd love to get some engagement from any listeners.
Yeah, we post new episodes every Monday and Thursday, YouTube and all of the podcast apps. So go check us out there. Share us with a friend as well. And Andrew,
that's a wrap.